everyone, and welcome to Training Tuesday for December 15th, 2020. I am Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. I am joined for this introduction by our 18-month-old children's python, Marcel, and by our 3-year-old albino Darwin carpet python, Asgard, who is somewhere behind me, right up here, exercising on this snake tree. Here he is right here. This week's Training Tuesday features neither of these snakes, but features just our snake, Spock. Spock's a Morelia bredli who was hatched on August 23rd, 2019, and arrived here on October 16th, 2019, so he was just about 7.5 weeks old. He was produced by Owen McIntyre at Rogue Reptiles. His dam was Raven and his sire was Raptor. Spock was featured along with his clutch mate number 1 in a few of our habituating baby snakes videos. Everything went so smoothly and without incident. He and his clutch mate have both just integrated into our family and into our training program very smoothly. The reason that Spock is featured in this week's Training Tuesday alone is because he had such an outstanding training session. You're going to get to see 3 repetitions, and I'm going to narrate as I always do so that you can follow along and you know exactly what's happening.
As always seems to happen sometimes, I'm having a little bit of difficulty figuring out exactly where Spock's head is. I thought I knew where his face was and which end of his body was which, but when I initially placed the target near what I thought was his head, I didn't get any reaction. So here I am searching for his head, and just when I was about to give up and restart, his head popped out of nowhere and he started following that target very confidently. He didn't hesitate to shift out onto the PVC perch, and he followed the target like he knew what he was doing and he had a goal in mind. So this first session just went extremely well. He followed the target, he touched the target, he held at the target, and then he very quickly took the reinforcement when it was offered. You should notice here during repetition number 2 that I've added the scale and the scale station adjacent to his activity station. And this is because he did so well during repetition 1, I figured that I might as well go ahead and introduce scale training to him. And I'm asking him to shift from his first activity station onto the scale. However, this is the first time that I've asked him to do this. And he is stretching his body as far as he can to reach the target, but he isn't resting his body on the scale station. He is hovering above it. He's not wanting to set his body down on the scale. I'm asking him to please come further, to do more, and he is telling me, I'm frustrated now and I'm giving you all I'm going to give you this time. So I lowered my criteria. I went ahead and asked him to hold in position here and then delivered the reinforcement when he did so. He just didn't want to let go of his station with his tail. He was anchored on there, and that was a comfortable place for him, and he was not about to let go and leave it for a strange location. Those photos showed him crawling back up onto his station when he was finished eating. I thought that's where he was going to stay and then go back into his enclosure. However, after several minutes, I found him like this, looking at the scale and still on his station. And so I decided that we would go for a 3rd repetition. And I had lowered my criteria. I already had in my mind that I would just have him repeat what we did during repetition 2. However, about right here, I start to see that his tail is relaxing a little bit on his original activity stand. And I'm just going to ask him one more time to stretch a little further and touch the target when I start to see his whole body actually move. And I take advantage of that body language and I ask him to start following the target a little bit further and around the leg of the scale station. As soon as he turned the corner, I knew I had him because now I have him going into an area that's strange for him, an area of three-dimensional space he hasn't been in before. And so I knew if I guided him back to a more familiar area where he could visually see things that he was accustomed to, like the other side of the room and his old activity stand, that he would continue to follow that target, and he does. And so now I'm really excited, and I'm thinking I can get him to completely shift out onto the scale station. However, right here, he starts to hesitate. I see body language from him that's telling me that's as far as he's going to go. I decide to ask him for one more directional change before I ask him to hold at the target and deliver his reinforcement, and he did a fantastic job. I also knew that enough of his tail was off of his other activity stand that once he took the food reinforcer, that it would follow him off as he coiled his body and wrapped the food. And that's exactly what happened. And so now he's 100% on the scale station. We had a successful session, and I was so proud of him. So at this point, what I do is I allow him to just stay on that scale station as long as he wants, so that he can familiarize himself with it, become comfortable with it, and so that it becomes something that he sees as reinforcing, a place where he feels safe, where he feels he can anchor himself, and that he's not in any danger. Once he's spent several minutes on the scale station, he starts to go back over to his other activity stand, which he's of course very familiar and very comfortable with. So I go ahead and let him take as much time as he needs to shift himself back over here. And I figured that once he shifted onto his old activity stand, that he would shift himself back into his enclosure, but he doesn't do that. He spends quite a bit of time just all stretched out across both activity stands and then across his normal activity station. So I thought I would just take this opportunity to show you this part of the footage so that you can see exactly where his stomach is, because it's very interesting when you see the snake all stretched out like this, where that stomach is and where that food is sitting. These animals are so long, and the stomach's not always exactly where we expect it to be. And so if you look here, you see that food bulge in his stomach, and it's actually in the middle third of his body. I also want to remind everybody that this behavior that you've seen, all of the behaviors you've seen in this video, voluntarily shifting out of the enclosure, following the target onto a station, and then voluntarily stationing on the scale, are cooperative care behaviors. And these are things the animals are taught to help them voluntarily participate in their own care. And it reduces fear, anxiety, and distress for the animals. It eliminates or reduces the need for force or restraint by handlers. It makes everything safer for us as handlers, and it builds a much more positive relationship between us as keepers and our animals. I also want to remind everyone that during every interaction with our snakes, we need to be keeping body language in mind so that we know when we can continue with what we're doing, when the snake is starting to get stretched outside of their comfort zone and we need to slow down or pause, and then when the snake is becoming really distressed and we need to stop.
Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Marcel, Asgard, and I would like to thank you for tuning in again this week for another Training Tuesday. We hope that you'll do the same next week. I hope that you found watching Spock's session educational and that it's helpful for you and your snakes at home. If you have any questions for me about snake training or other animal behavior or training, you can always contact me via our website at behavioreducation.org, or you can email me at behavioreducationllc@gmail.com. Contact me on Facebook, Instagram, or on YouTube. Until next time, everybody, please remember to be kind and love your animals.